Hello, it's another Drakkenheim recap. What am I doing with my arms? I don't know. Another Drakkenheim recap video. I filmed most of this when I filmed the one I posted last week. It got really long. We've had one session this last weekend, and then hopefully we'll be all caught up, and maybe I can stay caught up. Probably not. Prepare yourselves for another epic story. So, at the start of this session, they headed into the sewers. On their way, Ik decides to go through the spell book that he got from Oscar Yoren. He can determine that some of these spells are important, use some of these spells, but there's one in particular that he thinks that Zelda could really use, and it's different, involving some sort of contaminated ingredients. But they don't really go further into that. If they decide to copy one or learn one of the spells in this book, the whole entire spell book, or at least all the spells in the spell book, is going to disappear. And that is a homebrew rule from me, because I feel like if you could just learn everything out of a wizard's book, then that would defeat the purpose of having a wizard class. Nobody in my party is a wizard, so they can't just take his spell book and cast everything out of it. But if they would like to learn one spell out of it, I would allow it. It would just consume the rest of the book. That's a homebrew thing for me. I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else. To me, it makes sense. It's fine. They decide to go into the sewers, so they make their way pretty easily into the sewers, and they see some weird aqua-looking creatures. They're like half humanoid, some have like fins and gills, some have long tails, but webbed feet. Of course, Morgan throws a rock at them to get their attention. Two of them come up, introducing themselves, Blip, Bloop, and Slurpee. Blip, Bloop, and Slurpee are super eager to tell them they are currently looking for a gift to give the Duchess, and they're hoping to find something super nice. They tell the group that if they would like to meet the Duchess is always nice to those who bring her gifts. And they even offer to take them to the mistress. During this time, Delilah is collecting some sewer water. She's got gloves on, she's not touching it, and she's collecting the water into empty vials that they have. Morgan asks how they would get to the Duchess. Would they have to go through the sewer water? Because they can tell just by looking at it, not a good idea to get in that water. And Slurpee says, yeah, of course. How else do we must swim there. You can swim, yes? And they say, no, although technically they can, they just forget. And Slurpee says that, well, you can get there from the city level if you find the basin that collects all the sky water beneath the big metal dude. They note this. Ik also writes a quick note, hands it over to him saying, please take this to the Duchess. And it simply says that they are very eager to meet her. Then they go to the Black Ivory Inn. Morgan, of course, rushes in, goes to the bar, and gets drunk, making some constitution saves. She does make them though, so it's fine. They realize that there are patrons in like old-fashioned garb, very much out of style, and then there are a few select ones that are wearing things like hooded lantern's garb with the green cloak. You've got somebody in the front that looks kind of like paladin or cleric of the Sacred Flame. A few people that clash with the rest of the group. As Ik steps through the door, he glances back. One, he sees just like shimmer almost of magic as he steps through. And then the image that he sees is a well-kept city street of Drakkenheim, not the run-down ruins that he had just come from. This, of course, intrigues him. He steps back into the street and looks out, and it's a beautiful sunny day. He sees something in the sky a little bit far away, and he sees some people walking on the street, and he goes up to them and asks what year it is. And they say, of course it's, I don't remember the exact date, 2011? Is it? I knew it at the time. That's 15 years ago when the meteor hit. The exact date of the meteor hitting. He asks them about the thing that they see in the sky, and they say, odd thing that, isn't it? But they keep saying, it's such a lovely day, good to see you, and they keep moving on. Inside, some of our other party members start questioning patrons. I don't remember who they questioned first. I could have handled this better. I have some things I can say in hindsight. In particular, Nock starts questioning the Sacred Flame looking lady in the front. Delilah is trying to just gauge people at the bar. Our friend Zelda tries to question what looks to be the proprietary owner of the bar, but he gets annoyed with her interrupting the performance, and she flat out starts asking about secret smuggling rings in the middle of the bar. So he immediately turns her away and says she's off her rocker and asks her to leave. She ends up going upstairs and finding that most of the rooms are empty save for one. During this time, Morgan goes outside and tries to leave. She starts running down the street. As she gets to just about the corner of the street, there's a pop, and she comes back to the inn, facing the doorway. She starts riling up patrons inside the bar, saying, "Don't you know what year it is? Can't you see that giant meteor in the sky?" She starts demanding answers from people. Of course, none have any because they don't know what's going on. Back upstairs, Zelda ends up ding-dong ditching the guy in the room. She knocks on the door and then runs and hides for some reason. And then he peeks out, doesn't see anybody, closes the door. She does that 2 more times to the point where the 3rd time she does it, the door doesn't even open because he thinks he's going crazy and he's just hearing knocking now at this point. So she gains no information upstairs. At this point, the lady, Miss Charlotte, who has been on the piano this entire time, decides to take a break and she stops playing the piano. Ik, I think he made an Arcana check, or either that or he did Detect Magic, I'm not sure. And he does determine that there's something weird about the piano itself. At this point, Morgan gets super upset. She wants to leave. She doesn't want to be here. She decides that if there's something magical about this piano, she's gonna destroy it. So she tries to destroy the piano. This starts initiative. And everybody in every patron in the bar stands up and starts to defend both the piano and Miss Charlotte. In hindsight, I could have handled this part a lot better, but it is what it is. I ended up kind of speeding up time a little bit here. This is partially because at this point we were getting to the end of the night and I didn't want to keep people here, but I wanted them to realize that it was a time loop before we ended the session. I don't remember everybody's attacks or every round, but in the process, Ik does fall and his body disappears. He is in this weird cloud, purplish haze sort of space as the rest of the party continues to fight. They try to hit the piano, but it seems invulnerable. It does end up breaking at one point, but then reforming, which is me messing up, but it's fine. It ended up working out fine later. Every time they hit Miss Charlotte, nothing happens. She takes no damage, but it does make the patrons angry and target the person who hit them. Time speeds up, the clock goes off, and suddenly they're screaming outside, and the meteor comes crashing down, a shard of which comes off and pierces Miss Charlotte's chest. And at that point, everybody kind of blinks, and they're also in that cloud hazy space before blinking again, and they're in front of the Black Ivory Inn. Everything's still intact. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, no longer evening, and that is where we ended the session. That one was a doozy. I have a note on this next session that just says, "Just rat things." So there's that. The next session, we start in the tavern or outside of the Black Ivory Inn, and of course Morgan goes inside, gets another drink. This time she fails her constitution check and ends up losing her memory. Ik tries to remember mundane details about the life of our wizard friend, so that way he can trigger his memory faster. Zelda goes upstairs and Ding Dong ditches the door a few more times. Nock ends up bringing Anika's memories back by talking about the Sacred Flame, questioning some of her memories and trying to explain to her what is going on. She doesn't fully believe it, but she does feel like something is out of place here. As a DM, I ended up giving the stat block for Anika to the player that brought that NPC's memory back so that I didn't have to remember an additional 5 characters if they decided to talk to all of them. Anika reveals that she wasn't here very long, and that means she has little idea what they can do. She just remembers not to eat the food. Morgan gains madness. She ends up gaining the madness of last meal, meaning that she believes that this will be her last meal before she dies in Drakkenheim, so she's extremely hungry and eating a lot of food. She starts eating more, having to make more constitution saves. Still, she doesn't fail them, so there's that at least. Delilah tries to snap her out of it and make her stop, and does end up kind of bringing her memory back. During this interaction with Morgan at the bar, they overhear one of the barmaids coming up and asking for drinks to accompany the food she is going to take downstairs. The barmaid goes back into the kitchen, and at this point, Delilah determines that they should pose as barmaids to go downstairs. Through talking with Ik, Osiris realizes he's been in this loop several times, but that he doesn't think the masses, all these patrons in this bar, realize that it's a time loop. He does mention that at least when he was in this loop last, there was a guy upstairs that seemed utterly crazy to him. But now he realizes that maybe that guy hasn't had his memory wiped. Zelda, Morgan, and the group decide to make their way downstairs under the guise that they are delivering food. Morgan tries to do a lot of this, but she's a barbarian, realizing that she's kind of out of her depth, and she asks Zelda to do this, our charismatic sorcerer here. Zelda gets stopped at that door, and she tries to make her way through, but I think she got a little fed up as a player about taking orders from the rest of the group. So she ended up not helping in this instance. This forced our barbarian friend, although I don't know why our barbarian had to do it either, but this made our barbarian impatient. So she stepped up in front and started intimidating the guard trying to get in. She drops her food and starts trying to clean it up, and then tries to push past to get through the door, which of course the guard takes as an aggressive action and tells her to back off. And then of course, Barbarian decides to just hit her. Zelda does step up at this point, trying to keep Morgan from hitting the guard. So she steps up and she finally says, just let me through at least. Morgan, clean up all this mess. And she uses deception to get into the door and ends up seeing all of these different groups, but in particular, one set of people who look like they're chatting more quietly than the rest. At this point, Delilah turns into a rat and follows in to help Zelda if needed. Rat Delilah tries to search the room, so she ends up going towards this back doorway, squeezes under the door into the hallway, and finds a massive abomination in the next room that looks like it has multiple faces, one of which looking somewhat feminine, as well as the parts of a grand piano. She rushes back, but she's a mouse or a rat, so she can't exactly explain any of this, but she comes back into the other room. Morgan has gone back up, gotten some extra food, and come back down to deliver the food, trying to use the same tactic. So it doesn't work, because I'm not going to allow you to try the same thing multiple times. You have to try something new. And so ends up, yes, in fact, punching the guard this time because there's nobody to stop her. So she punches the guard. Initiative ensues. Multiple things happen. Delilah stays a rat for a while, but she jumps on top of a table and then gets hit out of her rat form as she tries to move. There was a fireball, I believe, at one point that took out most the bandits in this room, and then a moonbeam that also was taking care of many of the people here. They did have Osiris with them and Anika, who also aided a little bit. It was also at this point that I realized my husband had never seen a monster stat block before. That kind of hurt my soul. They also use sleep at one point to knock many of them asleep before fireballing them. Pretty sure that's what happened. It was very, very good strategy amongst the team. They ended up keeping one guard asleep, trying to talk to him about what was in the other room. And the guy was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they drag him down the hallway to look at the thing, and he can't see it. And that is where we ended that session. Whew, this is a long episode, guys. Oh, that's why it said just rat things, because Delilah had told me that she was just doing just rat things. The top of this one says 4 1s. So they're standing in front of this abomination, this amorphous blob of just flesh and teeth and arms. It is utterly disgusting. And initiative happens. They end up starting to attack this thing, doing quite a bit of damage. Again, this is me summarizing really quickly. At the top of the round, the creature ends up playing some music. Some of the group roll high enough perception, they realize the music's actually coming from upstairs. Even though the piano keys are moving in the chest of this abomination, Ik realizes there's a connection between the piano and this beast. So he decides to take Osiris and himself upstairs to deal with that. He has Osiris cast fly on both of them, doubling their movement speed so they can go upstairs and destroy the piano. In the meantime, the rest of the group tries to deal with this abomination, trying to keep its hit points down, waiting for that moment where they can just finish it off. During this time, Delilah does fall and almost gets eaten. Morgan definitely gets absorbed a couple of times because she's up there right in the fray. And there are plenty of really nice scorching rays, as well as some radiant damage from our cleric and our sorceress. It only took 2 rounds of combat is what I have written here. They do hit Miss Charlotte when they are upstairs, wasting one turn of Ikix upstairs, and they realize that that does not do any damage, but it does make everybody in the bar upset. So they start coming towards the rest of the group. However, they have fly, so they end up flying up into the air, kind of out of reach of most of the patrons. At first, Ik tries to go invisible and climbs into the piano, laying on the strings of the instrument. That doesn't stop it from playing, so he ends up doing a cone of cold from within the piano, destroying the piano into pieces. It's in this same turn that downstairs, Zelda uses magic missiles and finishes off the abomination, releasing her friend Delilah from the innards. While Delilah was engulfed, sorry, I missed this in my notes, she actually dies and hears a voice from one of the old gods that says, "Not yet, my child," and brings her back. They end up destroying the abomination, and when they do so, the illusion of this perfect, serene inn turns to rubble. You find this tunnel is right there. The people who were in more modern day garb suddenly have their memories returned to them. They thank the group, but at this point, it is nighttime. And they try to determine how much time has passed. And I have them roll. But they really shouldn't have known at this point, but I was excited, so I ended up telling them that they 12 days had passed. End up kind of setting up camp at the mouth of this cave. They do end up leveling up to level 6 at this point, so again, that gives them a long rest. They determine that it's probably safer to go through the sewers and this tunnel, though I remind them that the tunnel goes into the inner city, but it would eventually come out in the sewers, and that they could, of course, use the sewers to leave. So they determine that it's probably easier to go through the sewers than to go through Drakkenheim at night. That is what they determined to do. They end up going to the cistern, and here they find a bowl, like a pool of rot and water and sewage, bodies and bodies and bodies in it. And as they're watching, another one goes thump and slides down from above, landing and splashing into this pool of stuff. And as it happens, the barbarian goes, "I'm not dead yet," as if the body was speaking, I don't know what they're trying to do. You hear the thump, thump, thump above as something seems to look down, but he can't get down, I guess, and he's blocking the upstairs. So a benevolent DM, I guess. I don't know. In the cistern, Delilah notices a very strange wooden staff. It looks very magical, and she tries to reach it, but she can't. With the help of some of the group, she grapple hooks it and pulls it closer to her and finds it's a staff of the woodlands. Regardless, they also see Blip, Bloop, and Slurpee here. They are bringing gifts back to the Duchess, and they say if they go down this tunnel, they can meet her. But the tunnel is full of disgusting water. And Delilah does not have the walk on water or any of her spells prepared for that kind of adventure right now. So they decide that since the druid doesn't have her spells prepped anyway, and they don't want to get into another encounter quite yet, to leave via the sewers. Oh, this is where the 4 wands was. I put them in a crossroads, 4 wands on this random encounter. So they had delirium dregs floating in the sewer water in front of them. Behind them, they had some shadows lurking. To the right, they had ratlings. And to the left, they had an abomination that they literally had just fought. So that was a crazy set of circumstances for me to manage. I also wasn't prepared for 4 wands. I've been prepared for like 1 or 2 wands, not 4. So I wasn't prepared with all those stat blocks. At least I had the abomination figured out because I had just used that one. Regardless, they ended up doing a quick wall of thorns. Delilah, she uses this new staff that she has acquired and attuned to in the last few hours of travel. Ends up using that as a wall of thorns to kind of block off some people as they try to make their way through. Ikik did a fireball during this as well, right before that wall of thorns. And so that ended up killing quite a few things. However, because he killed so many, the groups didn't fight each other. Ended up going after the person throwing fireballs. Because originally they all turned kind of against each other, as they aren't all gonna work together, in my mind. That ended up making it easier for them to decide to go after the characters. The shadows, they picked those off pretty quickly. They did fight about which way to go, and then Ikik ended up falling and almost getting absorbed by the abomination, but it didn't happen. Almost killed another one of his characters off. They ended up kind of just running down the right path where most of those ratlings came from. I did do minion rules for the ratlings because they are a lower level. Pretty much as long as they hit, they would have killed it. So there were like 30 combatants on this map. So it was a little bit too much for me. And it was the end of the session. So yeah, and that is where we left off. Oof, let's talk about all the things I could have done better, which is unfortunately a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna touch on all the things. So in this episode, we talked about Reed Manor, we talked about the Black Ivory Inn, and then of course the cistern and the sewers. I think with Reed Manor, I didn't know Yoren's spells very well. I should have prepared that more. I was prepared for them to fight. I'm just always prepared for them to go murder hobo at this point. If possible, the barbarian's going to hit things. I've kind of like set a weird threshold now for all of my NPCs. Like they're gonna be able to take so much of her attitude before. I just don't want her, I don't want the barbarian's actions to dictate everything that the party is doing. And so I try to leave enough space for another player to butt in and say, no, we're not doing that. Because otherwise, she really kind of railroads them into just aggression all the time. And I know that that's not what everybody wants to do. It's kind of a balancing game here with the barbarian and all of the murder hoboing. I probably will make a whole video about that because I have gained some tips and tricks to kind of help when you have a murder hobo and the rest of the group isn't a murder hobo. Has been like a little bit of a struggle. So I'll probably make a whole video on how I've been handling all of that. But, you know, Reed Manor was fine. I think I could have done a little bit more with the battle. I probably could have killed someone. I didn't pull punches, but I wasn't using the stat blocks to the best of my ability. And I know this because in hindsight, I looked at them and I was like, I forgot I had this. And so I totally could have been better. I need to work on that. I need to work on knowing the stat blocks better. I really want to give them a challenge, but also that brings us to the Black Ivory Inn, where I did kill Delilah. And unfortunately, I know that her issue is that she gets really attached to every character. Even though I told her not to get attached to any character, I know that if I kill her character off, she probably wouldn't play. Which sucks because in this world, it's very likely to happen. So to kind of combat that, but make it more of a story element, I'm having the old gods kind of talk to her a little bit and help guide her character. And that was kind of the first little bit of that. She is a druid, so it's not like she cleric and is gonna have, although I guess she could multi-class, but I'm going to kind of use that to not prevent her death every time. In this instance, it would have been bad because they were fighting the abomination. And if they had killed the abomination, which they would have, then Delilah would not have come back. And so I kind of just did a little hand wave there because I know my players. And I think that's okay. Like maybe some people will judge me for it, but I know that it would not be fun for her to kill her character off. I'm willing to bend the rules a little bit to make it so that she still has fun at my table. And I think that is fine. I don't know. You guys are welcome to put your opinions down at the bottom if you made it this far in the video. The other thing I didn't do that I would have done better for the Black Ivory Inn was repeating dialogue. Technically, they only went through the loop twice. I thought they were going to go through a third time. In hindsight, I should have prepped like dialogue that people would have said every single time. Like I should have done more of a Groundhog Day effect for this, but I just didn't. That is on me. That was lack of prep on my part, lack of time to prep. Also, I've never watched any of the Drakkenheim series, which I think kind of bites me in the butt sometimes. I don't have the experience or know what it was kind of designed to look like originally. So I kind of just do whatever I want. At the same time, I think that gives me a fresh take on it. So there's that. I did mess up with the piano. I did have it get destroyed, but then it rebuilt itself. In my brain, it was because the abomination was at full health, so it didn't have to heal itself. It could heal the piano. But because they had done damage to the abomination when they went to destroy the piano, the abomination would rather heal itself than the piano. Does that make sense? I don't know. It ended up working, and thematically it made sense. I don't know what it was supposed to be. I didn't like that you had to kill the piano too, and that they were so far apart from each other, because it took them a whole turn to like get all the way up there. I have issues with that encounter in general, but maybe I was just running it incorrectly. Who cares? It worked. There were still great story moments in it. I realized I don't think that I have projected what's in Slaughterhouse Square enough. We don't do a lot of the rumor tables, which is on me, I think. I think I need to be rolling more on the rumor table. I don't think I projected that correctly. I think that is 100% on me, because even if we're not rolling on the rumor table, you can have people just talking about it. I could throw those rumors in better. I could have had Blip, Bloop, and Slurpee talk about the big mechanical beast up there. So I think because I didn't project that correctly, that also led to our barbarian friend trying to call to the beast up there. But it also could be that she's just chaotic and a murder hobo. But I do, in hindsight, think I could have projected that a little bit more. Some good stuff? Did I do anything well? Typical me stuff. There's a lot of stuff I feel like I don't do well. I'm not very good with NPCs, so I feel like I have to, especially when there's a lot, and there are a lot of NPCs in the Black Ivory Inn. So I think as soon as you give me more than one, I just have a hard time, because I want them to be dramatically different, but I can't think dramatically different on the fly. So I have to prep that kind of stuff. But I didn't for the Black Ivory Inn. I think I should have just prepped more in general with the Black Ivory Inn. But it is what it is. I filmed the next episode and I was going to tack that on to this one. But this one is already 30 minutes long. So I think the next episode will have 2 sessions in one as well, because I just completed a session last weekend and then I have another Drakkenheim session this weekend. So I may as well combine them into one, but don't expect that right away because I have a few other obligations this month that I have to get out. And I can't just do a full month of Drakkenheim videos. I think they don't really do that well, unfortunately. If you liked this and you want to see more of this, please subscribe and also, you know, try to support me in some way if you are able, so that I can keep making videos on YouTube, because YouTube doesn't pay, but Patreon pays a little bit more. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!